To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Theodore Rice learned to read people during 8 years in military intelligence. Micro-expressions, vocal inflections, the spaces between words. These were the languages of deception. He'd interrogated war criminals and exposed double agents. But nothing prepared him for the betrayal waiting in his own home. At 38, Theo had built a comfortable life in suburban Denver. His security consulting firm specialized in penetration testing for government contractors, legal hacking that paid well enough for a 4-bedroom house, his son's private school tuition, and his wife Christine's teaching salary to feel like bonus money rather than necessity. They'd met 10 years ago at a charity fundraiser. She was passionate about education, beautiful in an understated way, and seemed genuinely interested when he talked about encryption protocols. They married within a year. Benny arrived 2 years later, a perfect blend of Theo's analytical mind and Christine's warm eyes. The cracks started small. Christine's phone face down on the counter. Weekend teacher conferences that ran late. A new gym membership she never discussed. Theo noticed, cataloged, but didn't act. He'd seen marriages implode over paranoia. He trusted his wife. That Wednesday in October, Theo picked up Benny from Oak Ridge Elementary like always. His son climbed into the back seat of the Suburban, quieter than usual. 7-year-old boys were typically explosions of energy after school, playground politics, complaints about homework, requests for ice cream. Benny just buckled his seatbelt and stared out the window. Rough day, buddy. Just tired. Benny's voice carried a tremor Theo recognized, fear masked as exhaustion. At home, Benny went straight to his room instead of raiding the pantry. Theo gave him space, started dinner, and checked his emails. Christine texted that she'd be late again. Department meeting. The third one this week. An hour later, Benny appeared in the kitchen doorway, his Star Wars backpack clutched against his chest. His hands shook. Dad, his voice cracked. I need to show you something. Theo knelt to eye level. What's wrong? Benny unzipped the backpack with fumbling fingers and pulled out his school-issued tablet. My teacher doesn't know I recorded this. His eyes welled. You need to hear it. Cold dread pooled in Theo's stomach as Benny navigated to the voice recorder app. The boy's fingers hovered over the play button. Are you sure you want me to hear this? Benny nodded, tears spilling. I didn't know what to do. The audio crackled to life. Classroom sounds, chairs scraping, distant children's voices. Then Christine's voice, clear and unmistakable. Tell your father nothing about where mommy goes after school. It's our special secret, remember? If you tell daddy, very bad things will happen. He might have to go away forever, and you don't want that, right? A man's voice, unfamiliar, deeper. The kid understands. Don't push it. I'm not pushing anything, Harold. I'm protecting my son from. Theo stopped the recording. The kitchen tilted. Harold. He knew that name. Christine's college boyfriend, the one she claimed ended badly, the one she never thought about anymore. Benny sobbed. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to record it. The tablet was in my backpack because I forgot to turn it in, and Mom was talking weird, and I got scared. Theo pulled his son close, his mind already racing through scenarios. Christine wasn't just having an affair. The words protecting my son and go away forever suggested something far worse than infidelity. You did the right thing, Benny. I'm not mad. Theo kept his voice steady despite the rage building in his chest. But I need you to trust me now. Can you do that? The boy nodded against his shoulder. Go pack a bag. Clothes for a week. Your favorite books. Do it quickly and quietly. Are we leaving? Yes. What about Mom? Theo thought about the recording, about Christine's recent behavioral changes, about the cold calculation in her voice. Whatever she was planning, it was advanced enough to involve coaching their son. That meant lawyers. Evidence. A trap waiting to snap shut. Mom's going to be very surprised when she gets home, Theo said carefully. Now go pack. We leave in 20 minutes. While Benny scrambled upstairs, Theo moved with the efficiency of his military training. He pulled his go bag from the hall closet. Always packed, a habit from his intelligence days. He copied the recording to 3 different cloud services using air-gapped encryption. He photographed their financial documents and Christine's recent credit card statements he'd been too trusting to examine closely. He packed Benny's medications, birth certificate, and social security card. Most importantly, he called Arnold Atkinson. Theo. Arnold's voice carried concern. They'd served together in Afghanistan, trusted each other with their lives. It's Wednesday night. You never call Wednesday night. I need the cabin. Tonight. No questions. A pause. Arnold ran a private security firm now. Understood operational security. It's yours. I'll text you the new entry code. One more thing. I need you to access your law enforcement contacts. Find everything you can on a Harold Griffith, probably mid-40s, Denver area. Real estate connections. And do it quietly. How quiet? Submarine quiet. Copy that. Theo, you okay? I will be. He hung up. Benny appeared with his backpack, eyes red but determined. Theo grabbed both bags and ushered his son to the Suburban. As they pulled out of the driveway, he saw Christine's car turning onto their street, earlier than expected. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. She knew. Theo pressed the accelerator, and they disappeared into the Denver twilight. The war had begun. Chapter 2. Reconnaissance. Arnold's cabin sat 2 hours northwest of Denver, buried in the Arapahoe National Forest where cell service died and civilization became a memory. Theo drove in silence while Benny dozed fitfully in the back seat, occasionally whimpering in his sleep. Each small sound drove a spike deeper into Theo's chest. His son, his innocent, trusting son, had been weaponized against him. The cabin appeared around midnight, a modest A-frame with solar panels and a backup generator. Arnold believed in preparedness. Theo carried Benny inside, tucked him into the guest bedroom, and only then allowed himself to feel the tremor in his hands. He poured 2 fingers of Arnold's bourbon and sat at the kitchen table, laptop open. The recording played on repeat through his headphones while he transcribed every word, cataloged every inflection. Christine's voice carried no hesitation, no guilt. She'd practiced this. The man, Harold, sounded impatient but complicit. Protecting my son. The words stung like acid. Protecting him from what? From his father? Theo's phone buzzed with texts from Christine. Where are you? Where's Benny? Theodore, this isn't funny. Answer me. I'm calling the police. He ignored them all and opened his encrypted files. Background checks were his specialty. Within an hour, Harold Griffith's life sprawled across his screen. Harold Griffith, 42, CEO of Griffith Properties, LLC. Net worth approximately $8 million. Commercial real estate development focused on luxury condos and mixed-use properties. University of Colorado graduate, class of 2005, same year as Christine. Photos from his company website showed a handsome man with silver-streaked hair and a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. The surface looked clean. Too clean. Theo dug deeper. Accessing databases his consulting work granted him legal entry to, and others his intelligence training taught him to navigate carefully. Harold's business had 3 LLC subsidiaries, 2 of which showed irregular financial activity. Large cash transfers to offshore accounts. Properties purchased through shell companies. Not quite illegal, but the pattern screamed money laundering. A car door slammed outside. Theo's hand moved to the Glock 19 in his go bag, then relaxed as Arnold's familiar silhouette appeared in the window. His old friend entered using his own key, carrying a banker's box, and wearing the grim expression of someone bearing bad news. You look like hell, Arnold said, setting the box on the table. He was built like a fire hydrant, 5'9" of compressed muscle with a shaved head and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow from Kandahar. Found something. Always do. Arnold pulled files from the box. Harold Griffith is dirty, but he's careful dirty. The real estate development is legitimate enough. The problem is what he does with the profits. He spread surveillance photos across the table. These were taken by Denver PD's organized crime unit. They've had him on their periphery for 2 years, but can't make anything stick. He's connected to the Cordova family, Mexican cartel adjacent, specializing in moving pharmaceutical fentanyl through legitimate real estate transactions. Theo studied the photos. Harold meeting with known associates at expensive restaurants. Harold touring construction sites with men whose rap sheets included trafficking charges. So he's a criminal. A smart one. Everything's insulated through lawyers and LLCs. But here's where it gets personal. Arnold pulled out a different folder. 3 months ago, Christine Rice started appearing in surveillance photos. Coffee meetings with Harold. Lunch at the Halcyon Hotel. Twice they entered the same penthouse suite within 5 minutes of each other. The bourbon burned going down. 3 months. While Theo worked 60-hour weeks securing government networks, his wife was rekindling something with a cartel-adjacent real estate developer. There's more. Arnold's voice softened. I pulled your family's financial records. Someone's been moving money from your joint accounts. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts. About $40,000 total over 6 months, transferred to an account in Christine's maiden name. She's building a nest egg. We're paying a lawyer. I called in a favor with the Bar Association. Christine retained Shirley Briggs 3 weeks ago. Theo's blood went cold. Shirley Briggs was Christine's older sister and one of Denver's most vicious divorce attorneys. She'd built a career destroying men in family court, specializing in parental alienation cases and emergency custody orders. She's planning to take Benny. Arnold nodded. The recording makes sense now. They're coaching him to be afraid of you, probably fabricating abuse allegations. With Shirley's reputation and a kid's testimony, a judge would grant emergency custody before you could mount a defense. You'd be lucky to get supervised visitation. Theo's hands clenched. Harold wants Christine back. She wants my money and full custody. Shirley provides the legal firepower. It's a solid play, Arnold admitted. Except the kid brought you evidence before they could execute. What's the timeline? Arnold pulled out his phone, scrolled through notes. Based on Shirley's usual patterns and the money movement, I'd say they were planning to file within the week. Christine probably intended to have Benny disclose abuse to a school counselor, who would be mandated to report it. CPS investigation, emergency custody hearing, restraining order. You'd be shut out before you knew what hit you. The cabin's silence pressed down like a physical weight. Theo thought about Benny's shaking hands, the fear in his eyes. His own son, terrified because his mother had poisoned him with lies. I need to know everything, Theo said. Harold's business, his associates, his vulnerabilities. Christine's movements, who she's talking to, what evidence they've fabricated. And I need Shirley's case strategy. Arnold raised an eyebrow. That's a tall order. You run a security firm. You've got the resources. I've got the resources for surveillance and information gathering. What you're describing sounds like you're planning a war. Theo met his friend's eyes. They came after my son. They turned my wife into a weapon. They planned to destroy my life and take the only thing that matters to me. His voice dropped to something colder than the October night outside. It's already a war, Arnold. I'm just deciding how to win it. Arnold studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this smart. You're angry, and angry people make mistakes. I'm not angry. Theo pulled up Harold's photo on his laptop. I'm focused. Over the next 3 hours, they built a battle plan. Arnold would deploy his firm's assets, surveillance teams, information specialists, a former FBI forensic accountant. They'd map Harold's organization, identify weak points, gather evidence of his criminal activities. Simultaneously, they'd document Christine's affair and her conspiracy to fabricate abuse allegations. But evidence alone wouldn't be enough. Theo knew how the system worked. Even with proof of Christine's machinations, family courts favored mothers. Harold's money could buy lawyers who'd drag out proceedings for years, bleeding Theo dry while Benny suffered in the middle. No, this required a different approach. I'm going to destroy him, Theo said as dawn crept through the windows. Not just beat him in court. I'm going to dismantle everything Harold Griffith has built, everyone he's corrupted, every lie he's sold. And when I'm done, he'll wish he'd never heard Christine's name. Arnold leaned back. How? Theo smiled, and it was not a kind expression. The same way I took down terrorist cells in Kabul. Find the linchpin. Apply pressure. Watch everything collapse. Chapter 3. The Enemy Revealed. Benny woke screaming at 6 a.m. Theo rushed to the guest room, finding his son tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, tears streaming down his face. Dad, don't let them take me. Please don't let them take me. Hey. Theo gathered him close, feeling the small body shake. Nobody's taking you anywhere. You're safe. Mom said. She said if I didn't say the right things, bad men would take you away and I'd never see you again. Benny's words tumbled out between sobs. She made me practice. Over and over. About how you get angry and hit things and scare me. Rage blazed through Theo's veins, but he kept his voice gentle. Did I ever hit you, Benny? No. Never. But Mom said I had to say it or the judge wouldn't believe me, and then the bad men would win. The boy looked up with red-rimmed eyes. I didn't understand. I thought I was protecting you. Theo's heart shattered. Christine had weaponized their son's love for him, twisted it into a tool for his own destruction. You didn't do anything wrong. Your mom, she's confused right now. But I promise you, we're going to fix this. After Benny calmed down and fell back asleep, Theo found Arnold in the kitchen brewing coffee and reviewing surveillance photos on his tablet. The kid okay? She coached him to testify that I'm abusive. Theo's voice was flat, emotionless, the same tone he'd used reporting casualties in Afghanistan. Practice scripts. Promised him he was protecting me. Arnold's jaw clenched. That's parental alienation. Documented, it could flip custody. Could. Might. Maybe. Theo poured coffee with steady hands. I'm done gambling with my son's life. What did your people find? Arnold pulled up a series of photos. Christine spent last night at the Halcyon Hotel, penthouse suite. Harold was already there. This morning, they had breakfast with Devin Pena. He's a private investigator, specializes in manufacturing evidence for divorce cases. He's been sued 3 times for witness tampering, settled each time out of court. So they're building their case. More than that, Arnold swiped to a new set of images. Pena spent yesterday installing cameras at your house. Bedroom, bathroom, Benny's room. My guess? They're planning to catch you doing something they can spin. Or they'll just fabricate footage entirely. He's done it before. Theo absorbed this. The home he'd built, violated. Every private moment potentially recorded and weaponized. There's something else. Arnold's expression darkened. I had my forensic accountant dig into Harold's finances. She found something interesting. 2 years ago, Harold purchased a commercial property in Aurora through a shell company. 6 months later, the building burned down. Insurance paid out $2 million. The fire inspector ruled it accidental, but the investigator who originally called it arson? He retired 2 weeks later with a sudden windfall and moved to Mexico. Arson for insurance fraud. Suspected, never proven. But here's where it connects to you. Arnold pulled up bank records. The shell company that owned that property? It's registered to an offshore account in the Caymans. My accountant traced the ownership structure. On paper, it eventually leads back to a US-based trust. Guess whose name is on that trust? Mine. Yours. Created 6 months ago using forged documents and your stolen personal information. If anyone investigates Harold's criminal activities, the trail leads straight to Theodore Rice. The room seemed to tilt. They weren't just trying to take Benny. They were framing Theo for federal crimes. Insurance fraud, money laundering, potentially racketeering if Harold's cartel connections came to light. She gave him access to everything. Theo said quietly. My social security number, financial records, enough information to create a completely fabricated business connection. Shirley probably helped structure it legally. Made sure the documentation would stand up to initial scrutiny. Arnold set down his tablet. This is sophisticated, Theo. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer. The affair, the alienation, the false allegations, it's all theater. The real goal is to frame you for serious federal crimes while simultaneously destroying your credibility as a parent. You fight the custody battle, you look guilty. You fight the criminal charges, you lose custody. Either way, you lose. Unless I disappear. Which makes you look more guilty. Theo walked to the window, staring out at the pine forest. His mind worked through the problem like a complex security penetration. Find the vulnerability. Exploit it. Gain access to the system. Harold Griffith was the system. Christine was a compromised asset. Shirley was the firewall. Devin Pena was the backdoor. I need to talk to someone who knows Harold's operation, Theo said. Someone inside. His business associates are loyal or dead. The cartel doesn't tolerate loose ends. Then I need to create a loose end. Theo turned back. Harold's been successful because he's insulated. Layers of protection between him and the actual crimes. But every system has a weak point. Find me his. Arnold made calls while Theo researched. By noon, they had a target. Frankie Sims, Harold's director of property acquisitions. 35 years old, former college basketball player whose career ended with a knee injury and a Vicodin addiction. He'd been working for Harold for 6 years, long enough to know where the bodies were buried. More importantly, Frankie had a younger sister, Melanie Sims, struggling single mother with a 10-year-old daughter. Harold had recently foreclosed on her house when she missed 3 mortgage payments. The property was now part of a luxury condo development. Family. Arnold said, reading Theo's expression. You're going after his family. I'm going to show Frankie Sims that his loyalty to Harold Griffith has consequences. Theo's voice carried the cold certainty of a man who'd crossed moral lines before, in service of a greater good. And then I'm going to offer him a better deal. That evening, Theo left Benny with Arnold and drove back to Denver. He parked 3 blocks from Frankie Sims' apartment in Capitol Hill, wearing a baseball cap and jacket that made him anonymous. He'd surveilled the location for 2 hours when Frankie emerged, heading to a nearby bar. Theo followed. The Goat Tavern was a dive bar where the lights stayed dim and the whiskey stayed cheap. Frankie sat alone, nursing his 3rd bourbon. Theo slid onto the adjacent stool and ordered the same. You look like a man with regrets, Theo said casually. Frankie glanced over, wary. Don't we all? Some more than others. You work for Harold Griffith, right? Saw your picture on the company website. The wariness sharpened to suspicion. Who's asking? Someone who knows what Harold really is. Someone who knows about your sister's house. Theo sipped his drink. Someone who can prove Harold Griffith is framing an innocent man for crimes he committed. Frankie's hand trembled on his glass. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just like you don't know about the Aurora property fire, the insurance fraud, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. Theo's voice dropped. The forged documents that put all of it in another man's name. You're a cop. I'm the man Harold's trying to destroy. And I can give you 2 choices. Theo pulled out his phone, showed Frankie photos of Harold with Devin Pena, of the surveillance equipment installed in Theo's house, of bank transfers between Harold's companies and Shirley Briggs' law firm. Help me take him down, and I'll make sure your sister gets her house back, plus enough money to never worry about Harold again. Or stay loyal, and when the FBI comes, and they will come, you'll be the first person they arrest. Frankie's face had gone pale. He'll kill me. He'll kill you anyway, once you're no longer useful. Men like Harold don't keep loose ends. Theo leaned closer. But I can keep you safe. I have resources he doesn't know about, and once I'm done, Harold won't be in a position to hurt anyone. What do you want? Everything. Documented proof of his crimes. The real ownership structures. Names of everyone involved. And most importantly, evidence of how he's framing me. Theo slid a burner phone across the bar. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, I move forward with or without you, and the FBI gets an anonymous tip about your involvement in insurance fraud. He left Frankie staring at the phone, terror and calculation warring on his face. By the time Theo returned to the cabin at midnight, Arnold had more news. Christine filed a police report. Claims you kidnapped Benny. She's requesting an emergency custody hearing for tomorrow afternoon. Expected. They're accelerating because I disappeared. Judge Martin Vance is presiding. He's Shirley's 3rd favorite judge, known for granting emergency orders based on emotional appeals. Theo smiled grimly. Then we'll give him something more compelling than emotion. We'll give him evidence of conspiracy. You got Frankie? I gave him motivation. He'll come through. And if he doesn't, then we move to Plan B. Arnold raised an eyebrow. Which is? Louder. Theo opened his laptop, pulling up files on Harold's known associates, properties, and business interests. They want to play dirty? I'll show them what dirty really looks like. The war was escalating, and Theodore Rice was done playing defense. Chapter 4. The Counterattack. The burner phone rang at 4 a.m. Theo answered before the second ring. I'm in. Frankie Sims' voice shook. But we do this my way, and you keep your promise about my sister. Send me everything. Encrypted email to the address I'm texting you now. Theo was already at the laptop. And Frankie? Don't try to warn Harold. I'll know. How? Because I've been inside his network since yesterday afternoon. It was a bluff, but Frankie didn't need to know that. Send the files. All of them. 3 hours later, Theo's encrypted server held enough evidence to bury Harold Griffith for multiple lifetimes. Property records showing systematic insurance fraud across 8 commercial buildings. Bank statements connecting Harold directly to offshore accounts. Emails between Harold and Devin Pena discussing fabricated evidence, including explicit instructions to make sure Rice's digital footprint matches the shell company ownership. Most damning, a recorded phone conversation between Harold and Christine from 2 months ago. Harold's voice. Once he's arrested, custody is automatic. Shirley says judges don't grant visitation to parents under federal investigation. Christine's voice. And Benny? Harold, We'll adjust. Kids are resilient. In 6 months, he won't even remember Theodore clearly. Christine, I need you to promise he'll be safe. That's the only thing I care about. Harold, he'll have everything. Private schools, trust fund, whatever you want. We'll be a family again, just like college. Theo listened to his wife casually discussing his destruction and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. Whatever love had existed between them was dead. Now there was only the mission: protect Benny, destroy Harold, and make sure Christine faced consequences for her betrayal. Arnold entered the cabin's office with fresh coffee and a grim expression. The emergency hearing is set for 2 p.m. today. Shirley's going to argue parental kidnapping and claim Benny's in danger. Let her argue. Theo uploaded the files to 3 different secure cloud services. We're not showing up to that hearing. That's a mistake. The judge will issue a warrant. Good. Let him issue it. Theo pulled up a different screen showing financial transactions between Shirley Briggs' law firm and Harold's companies. While they're focused on me being a fugitive, I'm going to hit them where it hurts, which is everywhere at once. Theo's plan unfolded with military precision. First, he contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division through an anonymous tip line, providing a comprehensive dossier on Harold's insurance fraud and money laundering. The evidence was too solid to ignore. Shell companies, forged documents, offshore accounts, all meticulously documented by Frankie's years of record-keeping. Second, he sent the recorded conversation between Harold and Christine to Denver's Channel 9 News, along with a written summary of the conspiracy to frame an innocent man and fabricate child abuse allegations. The media loved corruption stories, especially when they involved wealthy real estate developers and unethical lawyers. Third, and most personally satisfying, he targeted Devin Pena. The private investigator's entire business model depended on staying beneath law enforcement's radar. Theo changed that. Using Pena's own surveillance equipment against him, Theo hacked into the cameras installed at his house and captured footage of Pena and Harold discussing the fabricated evidence. That footage went to the Colorado Bar Association, the state licensing board for private investigators, and every judge in Denver's family court system. You just declared war on an entire organization, Arnold said, watching the dominoes fall in real time. Harold's going to respond. I'm counting on it. Theo checked his weapons, the Glock 19, a backup Sig Sauer, and a combat knife he'd carried in Afghanistan. When he does, I'll be ready. The response came faster than expected. At noon, Arnold's security firm detected unusual activity around the cabin. 3 vehicles, professional-grade surveillance. They weren't being subtle anymore. Harold's people, Arnold confirmed, reviewing the license plates. 2 belonged to shell companies connected to his security contractor. The 3rd is registered to Devin Pena. How many? At least 6, maybe more. They're setting up a perimeter. Theo checked Benny's room. His son was doing homework, oblivious to the danger. We need to move him. Where? They'll have the access road covered. Then we don't use the road. Theo pulled up a topographical map of the surrounding forest. During his recon before arriving, he'd identified 3 separate escape routes, old logging trails that weren't on public maps. There's a creek bed half a mile north. Follows it 2 miles downstream. It connects to Forest Service Road 149. Can you get a vehicle there? Give me 30 minutes. While Arnold coordinated the extraction, Theo packed essentials and explained the situation to Benny in simple terms. Some bad people want to take you back to Mom before we can show the judge proof that she's lying. We need to go on an adventure through the woods. Can you be brave? Benny nodded, eyes wide but trusting. Like when you were a soldier? Exactly like that. They left through the cabin's back window just as the first vehicle pulled into the driveway. Theo carried Benny on his back, moving through the pine forest with the silent efficiency of his ranger training. Behind them, he heard doors slamming, voices shouting. Harold's men had realized the cabin was empty. The creek bed was rocky and steep, but it provided cover. Theo moved quickly, one hand on Benny, the other on his Glock. He heard pursuit, at least 2 men, crashing through undergrowth without tactical discipline. Amateurs. Harold had hired muscle, not professionals. A shot rang out, splintering bark inches from Theo's head. Down. Theo dropped into a depression in the creek bed, shielding Benny with his body. Return fire would give away their position. Instead, he pulled a smoke grenade from his pack. Arnold kept his cabin well stocked. and threw it uphill. Thick white smoke erupted, obscuring visibility. Theo used the cover to sprint downstream, Benny clinging to his back. More shots, wild and poorly aimed. These weren't trained killers. They were thugs Harold had pulled from his cartel contacts, probably promised easy money for grabbing a kid. Arnold's voice crackled through Theo's earpiece. Vehicles in position. 200 meters ahead, north side of the creek. Taking fire. At least 2 hostiles. Want backup? Negative. Get Benny to safety. I'll handle this. The Land Rover appeared through the trees, Arnold behind the wheel with a Remington 870 shotgun across his lap. Theo practically threw Benny into the back seat. Go. Now. What about you? I'm finishing this. Theo pulled his Glock. They want to play violent? Let them see what violence really looks like. Arnold hesitated, then nodded and peeled out. Theo melted back into the forest, circling behind his pursuers. 2 men, both carrying pistols with the casual grip of people who'd never been in real combat. They were focused on the road, arguing about which direction their targets had gone. Theo emerged behind them, Glock raised. On the ground. Now. They spun, weapons rising. Theo shot the first one in the knee. A precisely placed round that shattered bone and dropped him screaming. The second froze, gun wavering. I sat on the ground. The man complied, face pale. Theo zip-tied both of them to a tree, then removed their phones, wallets, and weapons. Tell Harold Griffith that Theodore Rice isn't running anymore. Tell him I have everything. The fraud, the money laundering, the conspiracy. Tell him the FBI already has the evidence. And the only question now is whether he spends the rest of his life in prison or finds a way to disappear before they arrest him. Theo leaned close to the man who was conscious. And tell him if he comes near my son again, I won't aim for the knee next time. He left them there and hiked to the rendezvous point, where Arnold waited with Benny in a safe house 40 miles away. The boy was shaken, but physically fine. Theo held him for a long time, feeling the small heartbeat against his chest. Is it over, Dad? Almost, buddy. Almost. But it wasn't over. That evening, the news exploded with the story. Channel 9 ran the recording of Harold and Christine, accompanied by an investigative segment on alleged corruption in family court. The FBI confirmed an ongoing investigation into Harold Griffith's business practices. The Colorado Bar Association announced they were reviewing complaints against both Shirley Briggs and Devin Pena for ethical violations. And Christine's carefully constructed image shattered. Her school district placed her on administrative leave pending investigation. Social media tore her apart. Comments ranged from disgust at her willingness to fabricate abuse allegations to horror at her conspiracy to frame an innocent man. Harold's empire began to crumble. Business partners distanced themselves. Banks froze accounts pending federal investigation. Properties went into forced sales as creditors demanded payment. But wounded animals were the most dangerous. At midnight, Theo's phone rang from an unknown number. He answered. You should have stayed gone. Harold Griffith's voice was cold, controlled. Now you've made this personal. It was always personal. You tried to take my son. And I still will. You think the FBI scares me? You think media coverage matters? I've been building contingencies for years. Offshore accounts you'll never find. Properties in countries without extradition. By this time tomorrow, I'll be somewhere your reach can't extend. Run then. Spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Oh, I'm not running alone. Harold's voice took on a cruel edge. Christine's coming with me. And once we're settled, I'll file for custody from a country that doesn't care about your American evidence. We'll get Benny eventually. Might take years, but we're patient. You really think she'll go with you? Now that everything's public, she doesn't have a choice. I made sure of that months ago. The trust fund in your name also has her signature on certain documents. If I go down for fraud, she goes down with me. So yes, she'll run. And she'll spend the rest of her life hating you for forcing her into exile. The call ended. Theo sat in the darkness, processing. Harold had another contingency. Of course he did. Men like him always had escape routes. But Theo had one advantage Harold didn't know about. He'd been planning longer. Chapter 5, The Trap. Frankie Sims provided the final piece of information Theo needed. Harold maintained a private hangar at Centennial Airport, leased through yet another shell company. Inside sat a Learjet 45, fueled and ready for immediate departure. He'd used it before to transport business associates to Mexico and Central America, always with filed flight plans that looked legitimate. He's scheduled to leave tomorrow night, 8 p.m., Frankie said over the encrypted phone. Flight plan says Cabo San Lucas, but my guess is he'll change course once airborne. Probably Guatemala or Honduras, places where his cartel connections have pull. What about Christine? She doesn't know yet. Harold plans to pick her up 2 hours before departure. Doesn't want to give her time to change her mind. Will she go? Frankie paused. From what I've seen, she's terrified. She knows she's complicit now. Going with Harold might be her only option to avoid prosecution. Theo thanked him and ended the call. Arnold sat across the safe house kitchen table, cleaning his Remington. You're thinking about stopping that plane? Arnold said. It wasn't a question. If they leave the country, I lose everything. Harold has resources internationally. He could drag out custody battles for years, maybe decades. Benny would grow up in legal limbo. So you stop them here? I stopped them here. How? Theo pulled up schematics of Centennial Airport. The hangar's in a private section, minimal security. Harold's confident. He thinks I'm still playing defense. He doesn't realize I've been inside his operation since the beginning. What's the play? We let him think he's winning. Let him pick up Christine, get to the airport, start his escape. And then we spring the trap. Arnold studied the schematics. You'll need backup. This isn't a one-man operation. I have you. You'll need more than me if Harold brings muscle. Theo made a call to someone he'd kept in reserve, Johnny Dean, former Delta Force operator who now ran a private military contracting firm. They'd worked together on a security assessment 6 months ago. Johnny owed him a favor. How many men do you need? Johnny asked after Theo explained the situation. 4. Experienced. Comfortable with gray area operations. I can have them in Denver by tomorrow afternoon. But Theo, if this goes sideways, it won't. You don't know that. I do. Because I'm not doing this for money or pride. I'm doing it for my son. And I will not fail. Johnny was silent for a moment. Okay, send me the details. The plan came together piece by piece. Theo would position his team around the hangar before Harold arrived. They'd let him load Christine onto the plane, let him think he'd successfully escaped. Then, just before takeoff, they'd move in. But the operation required one more element. Leverage to ensure Harold couldn't talk his way out afterward. That's where Devin Pena became useful. Theo had tracked the private investigator's movements since exposing him to the Bar Association. Pena was panicking, trying to destroy evidence, reaching out to lawyers. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd kept backups of everything he'd ever fabricated, including the fake evidence against Theo. Those backups were stored on a secure server in Pena's office. Theo broke into that office at 3 a.m., bypassing security with techniques he'd learned in military intelligence. The server yielded everything: fabricated surveillance footage, falsified documents, forged police reports. Evidence of not just Theo's case, but dozens of others. Pena had been manufacturing evidence for years, destroying families for profit. Theo copied everything and left a surprise: a virus that would corrupt Pena's entire network at 8 p.m. the next day, exactly when Harold planned to leave. When investigators came looking, and they would, they'd find nothing but destroyed data and proof of systematic fraud. By morning, all the pieces were in place. Johnny Dean arrived with 4 men, all former special operations, all comfortable operating in moral gray areas. They reviewed the plan, memorized the layout, and pre-positioned equipment. No one asked questions about legality. They understood the mission: protect a child from people willing to destroy his life. That afternoon, Theo received a text from an unexpected source: Polly Wall, Benny's veteran teacher at Oak Ridge Elementary. I need to talk to you about Benny. It's important. They met at a coffee shop in a neutral part of town. Polly was 55, with kind eyes and the weathered competence of someone who'd spent 30 years in classrooms. She'd taught Benny since first grade. I should have said something earlier, she began. But I didn't have proof until now. About what? Christine's been coaching Benny for months. I noticed behavioral changes, anxiety, fear of making mistakes, reluctance to talk about home. Then I overheard part of a conversation between Christine and another teacher, Judith Darling, who's apparently a close friend. Christine was asking about mandatory reporting protocols, specifically how to make sure a report would be taken seriously. Theo's jaw clenched. She was planning to have Benny disclosed to you. To Judith, actually. Someone more sympathetic to her version of events. Polly pulled out her phone. But I started documenting everything. Times Christine met with Benny privately at school. Changes in his behavior afterward. Inconsistencies in her explanations. She showed him detailed notes spanning 3 months. I'm prepared to testify that Benny showed no signs of abuse until his mother started these private meetings. Why are you helping me? Polly met his eyes. Because I've taught thousands of children, Mr. Rice. I know the difference between a scared child and a coached one. Benny loves you. Whatever Christine told him, it didn't erase that fundamental truth. He was terrified of losing you, not of you. Theo took the documentation, feeling something like hope. Thank you. This could make the difference. There's something else. Judith Darling mentioned that Christine seemed desperate lately, like she was being pressured. I think Harold Griffith has some kind of hold over her beyond just the relationship. He does. If he goes down for fraud, she goes down with him. She signed documents connecting her to his shell companies. Polly's expression hardened. Then she's as trapped as you are. Except she chose this trap. I didn't. As evening approached, Theo positioned his team. Arnold and 2 of Johnny's men at strategic points around the hangar. Johnny himself in a van with surveillance equipment. Theo in a concealed position with clear sight lines to the plane. At 6:30 p.m., Harold's Mercedes pulled up to the hangar. He emerged alone, checked his watch, and made a phone call. 10 minutes later, a second vehicle arrived, a Toyota driven by Christine. Theo watched through binoculars as his wife stepped out. She looked exhausted, frightened. Harold spoke to her urgently, gesturing toward the plane. She shook her head. He grabbed her arm. They argued. Finally, Christine seemed to collapse. She nodded, shoulders sagging. Harold led her toward the Learjet. Targets loading. Theo murmured into his throat mic, stand by. The plane's engine started. Harold climbed aboard behind Christine. Through the cockpit window, Theo could see the pilot running through pre-flight checks. They're preparing for departure, Johnny reported from the van. Towers cleared them for takeoff in 15 minutes. Theo waited. Patience was a weapon. Let them feel safe. Let Harold relax. The plane began taxiing toward the runway. Now, Theo commanded. Arnold's truck pulled directly into the taxiway, blocking the path. Johnny's van appeared from the other direction. The Learjet stopped, engines whining. Theo emerged from cover, flanked by 2 of Johnny's operators. They approached the plane with weapons drawn but pointed low, not threatening, just visible. Harold appeared in the doorway, face twisted with rage. You have no authority here. This is private property. FBI. A new voice cut through the night. Special Agent Manuel Reed emerged from an unmarked vehicle, badge raised. Harold Griffith, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Behind him, 4 more federal agents appeared, weapons drawn. Harold's face went white. You can't. I have lawyers. Your lawyers are going to need lawyers, Reed said. We've been building this case for months. Your employee Frankie Sims has been cooperating since last week, providing documentation of criminal activities dating back 6 years. Step off the aircraft. Now. Christine appeared behind Harold, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Theo standing in the shadows and something broke in her expression, recognition of what she'd lost, what she'd destroyed. Benny, she whispered. Please, I need to see Benny. You'll see him in court, Theo said. His voice carried no sympathy, no residual affection. Where you'll explain to a judge why you tried to fabricate abuse allegations and frame me for federal crimes. I didn't, Harold made me. You had choices, Christine. You chose wrong. Repeatedly. Agents led Harold off the plane in handcuffs. He was still threatening lawsuits, still convinced his money could buy escape. He didn't understand yet that it was over. Christine collapsed on the tarmac, sobbing. An agent helped her up, more gently than Harold had been handled. She wasn't under arrest yet, but Reed had made clear she'd be answering questions about her role in the conspiracy. As they were driven away, Theo felt Arnold's hand on his shoulder. You did it. Not yet. Theo watched the taillights disappear. This is just the beginning of the end. Chapter 6. Aftermath and Reckoning. The emergency custody hearing reconvened 3 days later with a very different tenor. Judge Martin Vance, who'd been prepared to issue an emergency order based on Shirley Briggs' emotional arguments, instead faced a courtroom packed with evidence of conspiracy and fraud. Shirley herself sat at the defendant's table, her legal license suspended pending ethics review. She'd built a career on aggressive tactics and questionable ethics, But fabricating evidence and conspiring to frame innocent parents crossed even her flexible moral boundaries. The Colorado Bar Association's investigation had uncovered patterns, at least 7 cases where she'd worked with Devin Pena to manufacture abuse allegations. Christine sat alone on the opposite side, without legal representation. Her sister had abandoned her once the ethics charges came down. Every lawyer she'd contacted had refused the case. Representing someone caught on tape discussing fabricated abuse allegations was career suicide. Theo entered with a team of 3 attorneys led by Nancy Cornell, a family law specialist with a reputation for demolishing false allegations. Benny stayed with Arnold in a secure location, spared from the courtroom drama. Judge Vance reviewed the evidence with increasingly dark expressions. The recording of Christine coaching Benny to lie, the documented conspiracy with Harold Griffith, Polly Wall's testimony about behavioral changes, financial records showing Christine's complicity in Harold's schemes. Mrs. Rice, the judge finally said, "Do you dispute any of this evidence?" Christine's voice was barely audible. "No, Your Honor. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" She looked up, eyes red from crying. "I thought I was protecting Benny. Harold said Theodore was going to take him away, that he'd discovered things about my past that would destroy our family. He said the only way to keep Benny safe was to get full custody first. So you fabricated abuse allegations. I didn't think it would go that far. I thought if Theodore just agreed to give me primary custody, we could avoid all of this. You coached your 7-year-old son to lie about his father abusing him," Judge Vance said flatly. "You conspired with a man facing federal charges for fraud. You allowed surveillance equipment to be installed in your marital home. What part of that was protecting your son?" Christine had no answer. The judge turned to Theo. "Mr. Rice, what custody arrangement are you seeking?" "Full physical and legal custody, Your Honor. Supervised visitation for Christine pending psychological evaluation and completion of a parental alienation intervention program." Christine's objection? She shook her head, defeated. "Whatever's best for Benny." The court finds that Benny Rice has been subjected to attempted parental alienation and is at risk of psychological harm if the current custodial arrangement continues. Judge Vance signed the order. Full custody to Theodore Rice, effective immediately. Christine Rice is granted supervised visitation 2 hours per week, pending completion of court-ordered counseling and psychological evaluation. This order remains in effect until modified by the court. It was over in less than an hour. Christine left the courtroom without looking at Theo, escorted by social workers who would be monitoring her mental health. She faced no criminal charges yet. Prosecutors were still deciding whether her cooperation against Harold would earn her immunity, but her life was shattered. Her teaching career was over. Her reputation was destroyed. Her son was lost to her. Theo felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. Outside the courthouse, Nancy Cornell shook his hand. "You won comprehensively. The custody order is as strong as they come." Christine would need to prove substantial change in circumstances to even petition for modification. What about Harold's trial? Federal prosecutors are confident. Frankie Sims' testimony plus the documentation you provided gives them multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Harold's looking at 20 to 30 years. And Devin Pena? Arrested this morning. The Bar Association investigation uncovered 43 cases where he manufactured evidence. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Theo thanked her and drove to the safe house where Benny waited with Arnold. His son looked up from a puzzle, eyes cautious. "Is it over, Dad?" Theo knelt down, gathered him close. "Yeah, buddy. It's over. We won. Can we go home?" "Soon. First, we need to talk about some things. About Mom and what happened and how we're going to move forward." Over the next weeks, Theo and Benny worked with a child psychologist specializing in parental alienation. Dr. Rebecca Hurd was patient and skilled, helping Benny process the confusion and fear his mother had planted. The sessions were difficult. Benny struggled to reconcile his love for Christine with the harm she'd caused, but slowly, healing began. Christine attended her supervised visitations faithfully. She never made excuses, never blamed Theo. She'd sit with Benny for 2 hours, reading books or playing games, and when time ended, she'd leave without protest. The social worker supervising reported that she seemed genuinely remorseful, focused entirely on rebuilding trust with her son rather than manipulating the situation. Theo didn't know if he'd ever forgive her. But for Benny's sake, he didn't actively sabotage the relationship. Children needed their mothers, even flawed ones. As long as Christine remained in treatment and showed continued progress, he'd support limited contact. Harold Griffith's trial became a media spectacle. The evidence was overwhelming. Frankie Sims testified for 3 days, documenting years of systematic fraud. The forged documents connecting Theo to Harold's shell companies were exposed and discredited. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Harold showed no remorse, even during sentencing. He glared at Theo across the courtroom as Judge Adriana Shepard handed down 35 years in federal prison. "You think you won," Harold said as marshals led him away. "But Christine still loves me. Always has. You were just the safe choice after I broke her heart in college. Second place, Theodore. That's all you'll ever be." Theo smiled coldly. "Second place got the custody, Harold. Enjoy prison." In the months that followed, life slowly normalized. Theo returned to his consulting work, though he hired additional security and changed all his protocols. Arnold's firm handled the ongoing threat assessment. Harold had connections, and even from prison, he might try retaliation. Benny enrolled in a new school, started therapy, and gradually returned to being a happy 7-year-old. He had nightmares sometimes, but they grew less frequent. The recording that had started everything remained on Theo's encrypted server, a reminder of how close they'd come to destruction. Polly Wall visited occasionally, checking on Benny's progress. She'd retired from teaching after the scandal broke, disgusted by how Christine had weaponized the school system. But she cared about her former student and wanted to ensure he recovered. "He's resilient," she told Theo during one visit. "Children are. But you did the right thing, fighting for him the way you did. I didn't have a choice. You had lots of choices. You could have given up. Could have let the system crush you. Could have run and lived as a fugitive. But you fought smart, and you fought hard, and you won. Benny will understand that someday." 6 months after the custody hearing, Christine requested a modification to allow unsupervised visitation. The court-appointed evaluator recommended against it. While she'd made progress in therapy, the risk of reinitiating alienation behaviors remained too high. Christine accepted the decision without appeal. She'd moved to a small apartment in Boulder, taken a job as a tutor, and attended weekly therapy. She wrote Benny letters he sometimes read, sometimes didn't. She sent birthday presents he sometimes accepted, sometimes refused. She existed in his life as a peripheral figure, someone who'd once been central but had destroyed that position through her own choices. Theo didn't know if she'd ever fully rebuild the relationship. That was Benny's decision to make, and he'd support whatever his son chose. One evening, nearly a year after the recording incident, Benny came to Theo with a question. "Dad, why did Mom do it?" They sat on the back porch, watching the sunset. Theo considered his answer carefully. "People make bad choices sometimes. They convince themselves they're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. Your mom thought she was protecting you, but she was really protecting herself from consequences. Do you still love her?" "I love who she used to be, or who I thought she was. The person who did those things to us. I don't love that person. Do you think she still loves you?" "I think she regrets what she lost. Whether that's the same as love, I don't know." Benny was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad we didn't go with her that night. When you made us leave." "Me too, buddy. Me too." Chapter 7. The Final Move. 18 months after Harold Griffith's conviction, Theo received an unexpected message through his attorney. Harold wanted to talk. No lawyers, no recording, just a conversation between two men who destroyed each other's lives. "It's a trap," Arnold warned when Theo mentioned it. "He's been in prison long enough to build connections, plan something. Maybe, but I want to hear what he has to say." The meeting took place at FCI Englewood, a federal prison 40 minutes from Denver. Theo passed through multiple security checkpoints before reaching the visiting room where Harold waited, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his diminished frame. Prison had aged him. The silver-streaked hair was now mostly gray, the practiced smile replaced by hard lines. They sat across a metal table, guards watching from a distance. "You look good," Harold said. "Custody must agree with you." "Say what you need to say, Harold. I'm not here for small talk." "Fair enough." Harold leaned back. "I've had a lot of time to think in here. About choices, consequences, the way things fell apart. And I realized something. We're not so different, you and me. We're nothing alike. Aren't we? We both wanted the same thing, Christine and a family. We both were willing to break rules to get it. The only difference is I got caught, and you didn't. I didn't break rules. I defended myself and my son. You broke into Devin Pena's office, illegally obtained evidence, coordinated an armed confrontation at the airport, shot one of my men. Harold smiled without humor. You broke plenty of rules, Theodore. You just broke them more intelligently than I did. Theo said nothing. There was truth in the accusation, and they both knew it. Here's what I want, Harold continued. Christine's drowning. Lost her career, her reputation, most of her friends. She's paying for my mistakes as much as her own. I want you to ease up on the custody restrictions. Let her see Benny without supervision. Give her a chance to rebuild that relationship. Why would I do that? Because I'm going to give you something in return. Information you need. About what? Harold pulled a folded paper from his jumpsuit pocket. Shirley Briggs didn't work alone on the conspiracy. There was someone else involved, someone who helped structure the legal framework to frame you. Someone currently practicing law who's planning to try again. Theo's blood went cold. Who? First, promise me you'll consider modifying the custody arrangement. Christine suffered enough. Christine fabricated abuse allegations against me, coached our son to lie, tried to destroy my life. Her suffering is her own fault. And if the roles were reversed? If I'd gotten to Benny first, convinced you I was the villain, would you have believed me? The question hung in the air. Theo thought about Christine's tears in the courtroom, her faithful attendance at supervised visitations, the remorse Dr. Hurd reported in therapy sessions. I'll consider it, Theo said finally. But only after Benny decides he's ready. I won't force him. Harold nodded slowly. That's fair. He slid the paper across the table. The person you're looking for is Luther Short. He's a family law attorney, works out of the same building as Shirley did. He was part of the conspiracy from the beginning, helped create the fake trust fund in your name, structured the offshore accounts to look like yours. He cut a deal with prosecutors, testified against me in exchange for immunity. Theo unfolded the paper, finding names, dates, account numbers. Why are you telling me this? Because Luther's planning to do it again. Different target, same playbook. There's a custody case in Boulder, wealthy father, mother who wants full custody. Luther's manufacturing evidence, just like he did for us. How do you know? Prison's full of people with connections. Luther visited someone in here 2 weeks ago, thought he was being clever. But conversations get overheard. Harold's expression hardened. Stop him, Theodore. Don't let him destroy another family the way we destroyed yours. The meeting ended shortly after. Theo left with the paper clutched in his hand, mind racing. If Harold was telling the truth, another father was about to experience the nightmare Theo had survived. Arnold verified Harold's information within 48 hours. Luther Short was indeed representing a client in Boulder, Isabel Brooks, seeking full custody of her 9-year-old daughter from her ex-husband, Jared Goldstein. The case followed a familiar pattern: allegations of emotional abuse, claims of inappropriate behavior, a child's testimony that seemed coached. Goldstein's being set up, Arnold confirmed. Same methodology as your case. Fabricated evidence, manufactured witness statements, probably forged documents connecting him to something illegal. We need to stop it. How? We can't just approach Goldstein without looking like conspiracy theorists. And going to the authorities without proof just makes Luther more careful. Theo thought about Benny's face when the recording started playing. About the fear and confusion in his son's eyes. About nearly losing everything because people were willing to weaponize children for profit. Then we get proof. Over the next month, Theo and Arnold conducted surveillance on Luther Short with the same precision Theo had used against Harold. They documented meetings with Devin Pena's former associates. Apparently, the private investigators' network hadn't completely dissolved. They tracked financial transfers between Luther's firm and suspicious shell companies. They identified patterns of fabricated evidence across multiple cases. And they found Luther's weakness: arrogance. Luther believed he was untouchable because he'd testified against Harold. He thought his immunity deal protected him from investigation. He was wrong. Theo arranged to meet Jared Goldstein at a coffee shop in Boulder. The man looked exhausted, desperate, the same expression Theo had worn during his darkest moments. Mr. Goldstein, my name is Theodore Rice. 18 months ago, I went through what you're going through now. False allegations, fabricated evidence, a conspiracy to take my son. Jared's eyes widened. I remember your case. It was all over the news. The people who tried to destroy me included an attorney named Luther Short. He cut a deal with prosecutors and walked free. Now he's doing the same thing to you. Luther's working with my ex-wife's attorney, but I don't have any proof. I do. Theo slid a folder across the table. Documentation of fabricated evidence in your case and 5 others. Patterns of financial transactions between Luther and people known for manufacturing testimony. Everything you need to file a complaint with the Bar Association and potentially the FBI. Jared opened the folder, hands shaking as he reviewed the contents. Why are you helping me? Because I know what it's like to feel powerless while people destroy your relationship with your child. Because my son was 7 when they tried to turn him against me, and your daughter's 9, and I won't let another kid go through that. Theo met his eyes. Fight back, Mr. Goldstein. Use this evidence. Expose Luther Short for what he is. Make him pay for what he's trying to do to you. Jared took the folder, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. God, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Win your custody case. Protect your daughter. That's the only thanks I need. Luther Short was arrested 6 weeks later, charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and witness tampering. The Bar Association suspended his license pending criminal proceedings. The FBI opened investigations into 12 custody cases he'd worked on, finding patterns of systematic evidence fabrication. Jared Goldstein won full custody of his daughter after the fabricated allegations collapsed under scrutiny. He sent Theo a photo of them together at her 10th birthday party, both smiling. And Theo felt something he hadn't felt in nearly 2 years. Genuine peace. Chapter 8. Reconciliation. Benny turned 9 in April. The party was small, just close friends and Arnold's family, no relatives from Christine's side. She'd been allowed to attend for 2 hours, supervised, bringing a present Benny opened with cautious hope. A first edition of his favorite book series, something she'd remembered from before everything fell apart. Thanks, Mom, he said quietly. You're welcome, sweetheart. Christine's voice trembled. I hope you enjoy them. They sat together for a while, reading the first chapter aloud. Theo watched from the kitchen, noting how carefully Christine maintained boundaries, how she didn't push for affection or make promises she couldn't keep. The therapy was working. She was genuinely trying to repair the damage. Later, after guests left and Benny was in bed, Christine approached Theo. Can we talk? Just for a minute. They sat on the back porch, the same spot where Benny had asked why she'd done it. Denver's spring air was cool but pleasant, carrying the scent of blooming lilacs from the neighbor's yard. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Christine began. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I want you to know that I see it now. How wrong I was. How much I hurt you both. What changed? Therapy. Time. Losing everything. She smiled bitterly. Turns out hitting rock bottom is clarifying. Harold spent years manipulating me, convincing me you were the problem. And I let him because it was easier than admitting I'd married the wrong person for the wrong reasons. Theo absorbed this. Did you ever love me? I did. I do in my own way. But I loved the safety you represented more than I loved you as a person. Harold was passion and chaos and everything that scared me after we broke up in college. You were stability and kindness and everything I thought I needed. But I never stopped wanting Harold, and when he came back, she trailed off. I made terrible choices. I prioritized my feelings over our son's well-being. I can't undo that. No, you can't. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want Benny to be okay. To know he's loved, even if I'm not the one providing that love anymore. Theo considered her words. Dr. Hurd says you've made significant progress, that you're genuinely working through the alienation behaviors. I am. I swear I am. Benny asked about unsupervised visits. Christine's breath caught. He did. Says he wants to go to the park with you. Just the 2 of you. Like you used to. Theo met her eyes. I told him we'd talk about it after his birthday. That I'd consider it if you continued showing progress. I'll do anything. Follow any guidelines you set. Supervised visitation becomes unsupervised day visits. For hours, twice a month. You pick him up, spend time together, and bring him back. No overnight stays until he asks for them. No introducing him to new relationships without my approval. And the first time, the very first time, you say anything negative about me or try to coach him about our custody arrangement, it stops permanently. I understand. Christine wiped tears from her face. Thank you, Theodore. I know I don't deserve this chance. You don't. But Benny does. He deserves a relationship with his mother, even if that mother made terrible mistakes. Over the following months, Christine rebuilt her life slowly. She completed therapy, took an online course in child development, and started volunteering at a literacy program. She attended Benny's soccer games from a respectful distance, cheering but not overwhelming him with attention. The unsupervised visits went well. Benny came home happy, talking about the museum they'd visited or the pizza they'd shared. He was cautiously optimistic about having his mother back in his life, though the relationship would never be what it was before. That was okay. Some things, once broken, could be repaired but never made whole. Harold remained in prison, his appeals exhausted. Theo received occasional messages through attorneys, Harold offering information about various criminal operations, trying to bargain for reduced sentences or better conditions. Theo ignored them all. Harold Griffith had no power anymore, no leverage, nothing to trade except increasingly desperate attempts at relevance. The real estate empire collapsed completely. Properties were auctioned to pay creditors and restitution to fraud victims. The Griffith properties name became synonymous with corruption and greed. Harold would die in prison, forgotten and irrelevant. Devin Pena fared even worse. The private investigator faced charges in multiple states as more fabricated evidence came to light. His methodical documentation of his own crimes, kept as insurance against clients, became his downfall. He received consecutive sentences totaling 68 years. At 57 years old, he'd never see freedom again. Luther Short accepted a plea deal, 15 years in federal prison in exchange for testimony against other corrupt family law attorneys. The scandal sent shockwaves through Colorado's legal community, leading to reforms in custody proceedings and stricter oversight of evidence presentation. Shirley Briggs lost her law license permanently. She moved to Oregon, took a job as a legal consultant for a firm that didn't Google her background carefully enough, and slowly faded from relevance. And Theo? He continued his security consulting work, raised his son, and learned to trust again, carefully and selectively. He dated occasionally, but nothing serious. Benny was his priority, and anyone who entered their lives would need to understand that. Arnold remained his closest friend and ally, their bond forged in crisis and strengthened through shared victory. They went fishing on weekends, attended Benny's soccer games together, and never discussed the violence they'd committed at the airport. Some things were better left in the past. Frankie Sims received witness protection and relocated to the Pacific Northwest with his sister Melanie. The house Harold had foreclosed on was returned to her as part of the restitution settlement. She sent Theo Christmas cards every year, thanking him for giving them a second chance. Polly Wall stayed retired but visited regularly, playing grandmotherly figure to Benny. She'd never had children of her own, and her connection to the boy felt like completing something unfinished in her life. And Benny grew. The trauma faded, not forgotten, but integrated into his understanding of the world. He knew his mother had made mistakes. He knew his father had fought to protect him. He understood that families were complicated, that love didn't mean perfection, and that the people who hurt you most were sometimes the people who loved you. He was resilient, just like his father. Chapter 9, Peace. 3 years after the recording that changed everything, Theo and Benny stood at a different airport, this time for vacation, not escape. They were heading to Yellowstone, just the two of them, for a week of hiking and camping. Benny was 10 now, taller and more confident. The fearful 7-year-old who trembled while showing his father a secret recording was gone, replaced by a boy who loved science and soccer and asked too many questions about everything. "Dad," Benny said as they waited to board, "can I ask you something?" "Always. Do you think Mom's really changed? Or is she just pretending until we trust her again?" Theo considered the question seriously. Benny deserved honesty, not platitudes. "I think she's changed. But people are complicated. She might have moments where old behaviors surface. That's why we're careful, why we have boundaries. Do you forgive her?" "I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip, buddy. It's a process. Some days I'm closer than others." "I think I've mostly forgiven her," Benny said. "She made mistakes, but she's trying really hard to fix them." "You have a good heart, Ben. I get it from you." They boarded the plane, found their seats, and settled in for the flight. Theo watched his son pull out a book, a science fiction novel about space exploration, and felt profound gratitude. They'd survived. They'd won. Not just in court, not just against Harold and Christine and the conspiracy, but in the deeper sense of preserving what mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from Christine. Have an amazing trip. Tell Benny I love him. Thank you for letting me be part of his life again. Theo responded, Will do. Thanks for respecting the boundaries. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was peace. And that was enough. The plane lifted off, carrying them toward adventure and normalcy and a future that felt secure for the first time in years. Below, Denver spread out like a map, holding all the memories of their war, the cabin where they'd hidden, the courthouse where they'd won, the house that had been violated and reclaimed. Dad, Benny looked up from his book. When we get back, can we have dinner with Mom? Like, a real family dinner, all of us together? That's a big step, Ben. I know, but I think I'm ready. And I think she is too. Theo studied his son's face, seeing hope and caution in equal measure. This boy who'd been used as a weapon, who'd been caught between parents at war, was choosing to build bridges instead of walls. Okay, Theo said. When we get back, we'll have dinner. All three of us. Benny smiled. A genuine, full smile that erased years of trauma and fear. Thanks, Dad. Thank you, buddy. For what? For being brave enough to show me that recording. For trusting me when everyone was telling you not to. For being the reason I fought so hard. Theo pulled him close. You saved us, Ben. Not the other way around. They flew toward Yellowstone, toward geysers and bison and open skies. Behind them, the war was over. The enemies were defeated. Justice had been served. And Theodore Rice, the man who'd been nearly destroyed by the people he loved, had emerged victorious. Not through violence or vengeance alone, but through intelligence, determination, and an unwavering commitment to protecting his son. He'd been tested in ways he never imagined. He'd crossed moral lines he never thought he'd cross. He'd become someone harder, colder, more dangerous than the man he'd been before. But he'd won, and Benny was safe, and that made everything worth it. The plane banked west, chasing the sun toward mountains and healing and the future they'd fought so hard to secure. Theo closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 3 years of warfare finally lift from his shoulders. They were free, both of them. And this time, when Theodore Rice smiled, it was real. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.